Pupils at Balcall Primary School looked at what children said that they needed to be ready to learn. What resources can the government offer to schools to help this happen and make sure money at home does not impact children's time at school?
So the government can help to support families in lots of different ways, but in education we've provided money to councils to help offset the cost of the school day. So that's to help with things like reducing costs for school trips, reducing costs for school supplies, for example. And we know that lots of head teachers as well use the money they get from the government through the Pupil Equity Fund to help lower the cost of the school day. So many head teachers, for example, use that money to put on free breakfast for their children and young people, and we know that makes a real difference in terms of improving attainment, but it also makes a difference in terms of improving attendance and engagement in school. So all of that's really important. It's extra funding coming from the government. We also provide support to families, so through our own approach to welfare in Scotland, which is more generous in general, and there's lots of different providing of support from the government there. For example, the Scottish Child Payment, which is pretty unique to Scotland and is helping to lift children and their families out of poverty. So there's lots of different ways in which we provide that support to families, and a lot of it is administered from our councils to our schools directly.
Pupils from Hollie Secondary School had mentioned how important school trips were to them. What more could you do to ensure everyone, no matter money at home, gets to go on a school trip?
So school trips are really important. I know that from my previous job as a teacher. They can really help to improve your relationships with your pupils, improve behaviour in your classrooms, but they also give brilliant educational experiences. So they're so important. And they look different in different schools, and they're often managed by teachers who are helping to support the learning in their classroom. So the government does provide that support I spoke to, which can be used to offset the cost of school trips. But there's other ways in which the Pupil Equity Fund can be used, for example. That's funding that comes directly from the government to help support an equal opportunity for every young person to experience a school trip. And we want to see more of that. There's also been in the past funding available from the Parliament, for example, to help support school trips into the Parliament. So that's really important too.
We were thinking about food. In the big question, everyone said that food is extremely important. What do you plan to do for universal free school meals in primary 6 and 7, and what more can you do to help secondary schools?
So we've got a commitment to roll out universal free school meals in primary 6 and 7. Just now we're targeting that support to those in P6 and 7 who receive the Scottish Child Payment, but our focus is on universal rollout. That's expensive, but we think it's really important, and we know that on average free school meals save families £400 per child per year. So it's making a huge difference. But we're also looking at how we can support free breakfast in schools. So we've got, through the budget, funding that's going to local authorities to help support a pilot of free breakfast. And we're supporting a rollout of targeting free school meals in our high schools. So looking at free school meal provision in S1 to S3, and that will be done in a number of local authorities in the next year, seeing how we can provide that extra support in our secondary schools, because we know our secondary pupils need that support too.
There was lots of very enthusiastic pupils here today. What do you think of how we as young people have responded to this issue? Why is it extremely important you hear our opinions when making these huge decisions?
So I think it's hugely important we listen to the views of children and young people in all that we do in education, but also it's been really heartwarming today to hear the strength and the passion coming from young people around about why this funding is important. I think traditionally, 20 years ago, longer ago when I was at school, schools didn't necessarily respond to this type of need. It was done by other services, and perhaps that support just didn't exist at all. So our schools have adapted and have changed because society's changed, and they're providing that wraparound support now for families, which I think is so important. And we know that if families are better supported, they're much more likely to engage with the education of their children and young people. And so there's a lot more I think the government could do in that space to help provide that support. But for me today, it's been really heartwarming to hear the strength and the passion from young people, and it's so important that all politicians listen to the views of children and young people. I used to be a teacher, so I know how important it is to build that into all that I do in education.
What do you have to say to all the children and young people in the Voice Network who are taking action in their schools on poverty?
So to all the children and young people in the Voice Network who are taking that action in relation to poverty, keep going. Your voices are being listened to. We need you at the table, and it's so important that your views are listened to by government of the day and by politicians like me, so that we can help to improve things for you and for the young people who are yet to come.